Ladies and gents, welcome back to La Historia, the show that is about to travel into East Asia for the first time. Which means if I hear one unfunny, stereotypical joke, I'm calling Jackie Chan. Wait a minute, he's not Cambodian. God damn it.
One of these temples, a rival to that of Solomon and erected by some ancient Michelangelo, might take an honorable place beside our most beautiful buildings. It is grander than anything left to us by Greece or Rome.
So, welcome to the former Khmer Kampuchea. So, speaking of the Khmer Kampuchea, to start off with, the name Cambodia comes from the ancient tribal Cambodian area, Kambuja Desa, which comes from the tribal people, the Cambodia, which that was their name in early Sanskrit. But bottom line, the name comes from the French literization of Kampuchea, which is Cambodge, and then the English translation is the Kingdom of Cambodia. So, Kampuchea in Sanskrit, Cambodge in French, and Cambodia in English. So, let's start from the very beginning as we always do. Cambodia is another very old place. Archaeologists working in the late 90s and 2000s have found early stone tools from about 6,000 or 7,000 BCE and pottery from about 42,000 BCE. But this was interesting because there were some expeditions and excavations at graves in Phum Snay in northwest Cambodia that revealed an exceptionally high number of injuries caused by perhaps interpersonal violence. They even found a number of swords and other combat weapons in the area. So yeah, early wars between the Cambodian people. Quickly brushing through the Asian Iron Age that started in 500 BCE in Cambodia and ended at the end of the Funan Kingdom, but we'll get there. They first started socio-political and maritime trade with India. The settlers developed complex, highly developed societies with huge religious cosmology, mostly influenced by Hinduism. This was kind of cool because most civilizations lived along the coast and in the Mekong River Delta with houses on stilts where they could cultivate rice easier. So, houses on stilts, I could imagine. During this time, they also fished and had domesticated animals. Coming to the first major Cambodian civilization, the Funan Kingdom, which started in the 1st century CE and went to about 500 CE. The thing about the Funan Kingdom is most of what we know about them comes from Chinese writings. This was even laid down by French historian Claude Jacques, who said, "History of pre-Angkorian Cambodia was reconstructed much more on the basis of Chinese records than that of Cambodian inscriptions." But the Chinese writings did detail areas of the Funan Kingdom which existed in Cambodia and even a bit of Vietnam. It was characterized by a high surplus of food ingredients, urban centers, high population, production of surplus food, and socio-political identifications that were legitimized by Hindu ideologies or Indian religious ideologies, so probably Hinduism and Buddhism. Funan was also characterized by walled and moated cities that were around the lower Mekong and Basak rivers from the 1st to the 6th century CE. So yeah, 1st to 6th century CE, that was about when the Funans had their kingdom. And even Funan itself is a Chinese word. Major cities were Angkor Boré in Takeo province and Ok Ao in the modern-day An Giang province in Vietnam. Funan was composed of loose communities ruled by each its own ruler, but it was linked by a common culture and shared economy. Rice was huge. In fact, rice farmers were kind of economically interdependent as their surplus rice found its way to the fishers on the coasts. So trade with India started happening a bit before 500 BCE actually, and they controlled coastline and maritime trade routes with especially India. The language of the Funan Kingdom was an early form of Khmer, and its written form was Sanskrit. In between the years of 245 and 250 CE, there were dignitaries from the Sui dynasty of China who visited the Funan city of, and I gotta pronounce this off my laptop because it's super hard, Vyadharapura, and determined Funan to be a very ethnically and religiously diverse area, but did have a distinct Hindu culture. And during around the same time, but actually about 100 years earlier in the 2nd century CE, Funan was trading with the Han dynasty. Funan effectively controlled strategic land routes in heavily populated areas and occupied a prominent position as an economic and administrative hub. Now, quickly, I'm going to get to a founding myth of Funan. Anyone who studies Cambodian history knows this story, so I'm going to go through it quickly. It's a myth that comes from Katigara, where an Indian Brahmin, or prince, by the name of Kawandinya, marries a Khmer princess by the name of Nagi Soma, thus establishing the first Cambodian royal dynasty. But like I said, this is just a myth. We don't know if it actually happened. So basically, there's a lot of quotes and squabbles and crap about it, but I'm not going to really get into it, but because there's major scholarly debate over what the fall of Funan was. We don't really know a whole lot about it, but it was basically replaced by the Chenla Kingdom, which is actually a Southeast Asian Indian-inspired name. In 616 or 617 CE, the Chenla Kingdom sends a embassy to the Sui dynasty of China, and says that Chenla was a vassal of Funan, but under the ruler, gotta read this, Citrasena Mahendravarman. Wow. They conquered Funan under its own rule. And side note, my god, some of these Southeast Asian names are hard. And again, most of the records that were written by Chinese scholars anyway have been contested since the 1970s. There was a notion of the Kingdom of Chenla being centered in Laos, modern-day Laos, but that's highly debated. So now we're going to get to the real Cambodian stuff, leaving behind the stuff that was written by Chinese people. The Khmer Empire that lasted 6 centuries from 802 CE to 1431 CE. The Khmer Empire was characterized by technical, artistic, cultural, and progressive achievements, political integrity, and administrative stability. It represents a cultural and technical apogee of the Cambodian and Southeast Asian pre-industrial era. After Chenla split into 2 kingdoms, the land Chenla and the water Chenla, water Chenla was absorbed by the Malays and the Javanese and eventually incorporated into Java and Srivijaya. So we're going to quickly go through the stark raving madness of land Chenla ruler Jayavarman II. He initiated a mythical Hindu-style worship with a ceremony at Mount Kulin, or now Mount Mahendra, in 802 CE. It was intended to, what else, proclaim political autonomy and just legitimacy, but really, it was Jayavarman not listening to Kanye West when he said the following. No one man should have all that power. Because after that, he declared himself Devajara, or God King, divinely appointed and uncontested. Stop tripping, I'm tripping off the power. Again, kind of like Kanye West. Wow. He did declare independence from the kingdoms of Shaliandra and Srivijaya. He established a city called Hariharalaya, the first capital of the Angkorian area, near the actually modern town of Rulos. Much easier to pronounce. He began to erect some religious monuments and establish a trade center and other centers north on the Tony Sap Lake. This became kind of an area for urban trade and centralization, but like I said, Jayavarman was kind of a crazy guy. A successor of his, Indravarman I, along with his son and successor, Yasovarman, established another capital. I'm going to put the name here because it's really long and hard to pronounce, and ordered construction of huge borees or water reservoirs north of the capital. So pretty smart thinking. The management network depended on huge areas of channels, ponds, like just kind of man-made inlays, sort of like aqueducts that flowed into the city. The largest component of this water network was the West Beret, a reservoir of about 8 kilometers or 5 miles long and 2 kilometers or 1 mile across. And it could contain about 50 million cubic meters of water. The royal administration was based...
Thank you for watching me this far.
The administration of the royals was based on the Shivaite Hindu state and the central cult of a sovereign warlord or protector of the people, also known as the Varman. No, Yosemite, no.
You better open that gate, Prince Varman!
No, I said no, stop it. Stop it. It's not Varman, it's Varmin. He's so uncultured. Then there was another dynasty, the Mahidahapura. Holy crap. The Mahidaharapura. Yes! Its first king was Jayavarman VI, named after that first Jayavarman, who was all crazy. The area that encompassed these various capitals was spread out among an area of about 1,000 kilometers squared, but historians today call it Angkor, including the glorious Hindu temple, the oldest and biggest Hindu temple in the world. Here it is, Angkor Wat. Anybody who visits Cambodia tries to visit this thing. Under a king by the name of Suryavarman III, who lived between 1113 and 1150 CE, the empire reached its greatest extent. It either directly or indirectly controlled Indochina, the Gulf of Thailand, and large areas of northern maritime Southeast Asia. Angkor Wat itself was also commissioned by Suryavarman II. It took a period of about 37 years to build. It has 5 towers which represent Mount Meru and is considered a classical interpretation of Khmer architecture. In 1150 CE, Suryavarman was killed in a battle. There was a huge period of dynastic upheaval and a Cham sack of Angkor in 1177, so about 27 years after Suryavarman's death. Then we have who is considered to be Cambodia's greatest king, Jayavarman VII, who ruled from 1181 to 1219 CE. He was a Mahayana Buddhist. He started off his reign by successfully striking back at the kingdom of Champa, so he must have been taking lessons from Johnny Gargano. During his nearly 40 years in power, architecture soared, economy and trade soared, and he became the most prolific builder in the Khmer Empire. There was a Chinese diplomat by the name of Zhao Daguan who came to China in 1296, who came to Angkor in August of 1296, and was in the court of King Srindravarman until 1297. He wrote a detailed report known as The Customs of Cambodia on life in Angkor, and his portrayal is one of the most important sources of understanding historical Angkor and what went on with the daily citizens. So this guy actually paid attention to what he was writing. The empire was like any other society. It had 3 classes: the elite, the workers, and the slaves. It was a very agrarian society. The elite included the usuals: priests, military leaders, advisors, priests, religious ascetics, and others. The workers were, of course, agricultural laborers and builders, and the slaves were slaves from military campaigns or the distant villages. So then we go into the Dark Ages of Cambodia. It took place from the early 15th century to about 1863. There aren't a lot of reliable sources for the beginning of this. They're very rare. A conclusive explanation detailing the decline of the Khmer Empire has not been produced, so we can't dive deep there. Most historians have concluded that changes in religious tradition, dynastic systems, military nature, administrative nature, ecological imbalance, and even environmental problems and a whole bunch of other factors had something to do with it. Obviously, things happen. During the 17th and 18th centuries, Siamese or Thai and Vietnamese conquest became huge in aggression and continued to threaten the Cambodian people. So, in 1863, in the 19th century, King Ang Duong received offers from the French to be protected by them and become a French protectorate, and his successor, King Norodom Prombariec, signed an official agreement to become a French protectorate on the 11th of August, 1863. So things were going good for a little while through the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th, until during World War II there was a Franco-Thai war, which left the French in a huge position of weakness, kind of like they had been throughout the entirety of World War II. At the end of the war, French General Charles de Gaulle was kind of concerned about Indochina's position, tried to win it back, and offered the other protectorates a carefully circumscribed measure of self-governance. Fast forwarding through to the 1960s, Cambodia was going through kind of a tumultuous time, and with its politics becoming polarized with the Japanese occupation and stuff. There was opposition to the government growing from the middle class, and there were a lot of leftists, left-leaning leaders that were actually educated in Paris. A few of these were Son Sen, Yang Sari, and Saloth Sar, later becoming known as Pol Pot. They led an insurgency under the secretive and clandestine party, the Cambodia Communist Party, and Cambodian leader Prince Sihanouk called these insurgencies the Red Khmer or the Khmer Rouge. In 1966, there were some swings to the right from the National Assembly, but as the Khmer Republic was approaching, the ideology of communism basically took over Cambodia. And so now we sadly come to the CPK, the Kampuchea regime, under everyone's favorite Pol Pot, running from 1975 to 1979. And I'm not going to talk too much about this because, like me, you guys are probably going to be saddened by this, so I'll just give you some basic facts quickly. So once they won their leadership over the Cambodian populace and land, they immediately started evacuation of urban cities and towns in order for everyone to go work on farms. They sought to completely revamp and refresh Cambodian society, discarding every remnant of the old society. Agriculture was collectivized, and every other remnant of the industrial aspect was either abandoned or taken under state control. And they didn't even have a currency or a banking system at the time. Their relations with Vietnam and Thailand worsened at this point. Nguyen Che, Sun Se, Yang Cherry, and Pol Pot were controlling Cambodia, and on January of 1976, they established Democratic Kampuchea as a People's Communist Republic, and Prince Sihanouk resigned on the 4th of April of that same year, 1976. Quickly going over this as it makes me sad. During the evacuation of Phnom Penh, about 20,000 people died due to starvation and other factors. So this sudden change from urbanization back to a more rural, agrarian, farm-style thing just did not work. And many of the populace suffered on just hunger and malnutrition. Some of the other minority ethnicities in Cambodia, like the Cham and the Vietnamese, suffered specific atrocities against them and specific discriminations. It was even to the point where some international sources called this period the Cham Genocide. There was a UN investigation that reported 2 to 3 million dead. UNICEF reported 3 million killed. Marek Silwinski says that 1.8 million is a conservative figure. Cambodians, Vietnamese, Cham, everybody in that region alike suffering under the occupation of four men, but especially one brutal madman. I'm glad in my research I got to know the names and identities of the other 3 or 4 leaders that were responsible for this atrocity. I mean, usually Pol Pot gets hyped up and put at the forefront of this, but, you know, Hitler had Himmler and Göring, right? This all ended on the 10th of January 1979 when Vietnamese forces and the Cambodian United Front for National Salvation, or CUFINS, invaded Cambodia and overthrew the Khmer Rouge. And the People's Republic of Cambodia was established with Heng Samrin as the head of state. The civil war that happened with the Khmer Rouge, or right before the Khmer Rouge as well, displaced over 600,000 Cambodians into Thai refugee camps and other refugee camps. And of course, a lot of Cambodians fled to places like the United States. The 90s till now, when on the 23rd of October 1991, the Paris Conference reconvened and got the UN to patriate a ceasefire in Cambodia. And 2 years later, in May of 1993, millions and millions of Cambodian people participated in elections. Cambodia was pretty much the first East Asian nation I got to touch on, and again, I'm really glad it was, because this is a true hybridization between East Asian and South Asian cultures, between Chinese and Indian, married to make something just hugely unique. The Cambodian people have just had this magnificent story, going from just simple rice farmers to the people that built one of the most magnificent places of worship in the world, to people who have done a lot more. And here on La Historia, I don't really want to get much into the deeds of horrible dictators and get into what John Green called great man history, or in this case, horrible man history. But the unfortunate reality is you can't talk about Cambodia without talking about Pol Pot. And that's why I knew going into this episode it was going to be kind of difficult, but I think we got through it okay. So now comes that time. Here's the screen. So now comes that time. Here's the screen recorded footage right here. Right now I'm on the Isle of Man, which is a great mediator because it's just some island off the coast of the UK. And so now I'm about to hit rerun. Here we go. The next country is going to be Morocco. We're going back to North Africa. We'll see you next week.